First of all, it's very early here and I love the place to read and meditate in the morning. But obviously there are some animals which are making some noises, but based on the fact that I'm not the classic YouTuber and this is more a journal than it is anything else, I felt it's totally fine and alright. And so what I'm speaking about is that 4 months, 10 days, around 447 hours of working out, roughly 1,000 kilometers of running, 150 kilometers of swimming, more than 3,000 kilometers of cycling were a part of the past. And yep, the answer is I did an Ironman. And no kids, I didn't time travel or something. It was just that back at this time I was not directly reflecting about it because my life was event on event, and I thought I can leave some time in between, a gap, to really think about how I experienced the whole process, but also the event itself. So it's 8 months later. The Ironman was in October 2023 and now we're in May 2024. And there are 3 pillars I want to speak about. The first pillar is why the hell an Ironman? I want to go into the reasons and the motivation behind it. Number 2 is how did I execute it? I think this is just from an athletic point of view interesting, and I wanted to hold it because at the moment I moved to a hybrid athlete plan again to keep or maintain my physics and my endurance. And the third part is most important, what I learned by doing one and why it is worth this journal. So let us start with why the hell an Ironman. There's a Chinese tradition called Misogi, and the idea behind is very simple. Every year you do one insurmountable challenge, and if you are done with it, everything else which will happen in this year, every obstacle seems like easy. And for that reason, I'm picking every year something which can be a physical challenge, but also a mental challenge, and I decide to do it. I felt that over the last years in my life, every time I had the feeling of I'm uncomfortable with doing something, those were the events, those were the situations where I really learned, where I elevated myself, where I grew basically. And so meanwhile, I have something when I feel an inner nervosity and I am feeling, oh, I do not necessarily want to do this, I'm pushing myself into it. So the Misogi Chinese tradition has an add-on, which is my personal bucket list. On the bucket list, for example, is skydiving, which I'm currently doing or which I'm currently absolving. I'm somehow blocked by my shoulder. I have a dislocated shoulder. So the whole process of making this skydiving license is a bit more complex than it should be. I have to hire people who help me in the wind tunnel to open the parachute by putting my hand along the body and not how it usually is to grab the parachute, all those kind of things. But yeah, this bucket list, I'm carrying it around, it's very important to me. And obviously it's a bucket list which is kind of paired with the Misogi idea of everything I'm doing there is making fun on the one hand, I want to experience before I leave the earth. But on the other hand, it's also challenging physically or mentally. During all of this, and I said this in another journal already, is that the process is elementary. What I mean by that is if you say I do an Ironman, probably you think the most or the best thing is about crossing the finish line. But at the end of the day, it's same with entrepreneurship, it's same with everything else. It's about training, it's about preparing, it's about being excited for the day you are starting. And the process itself is way more important than the actual race itself. And so for that reason, the Misogi and my combination with the bucket list, I did an Ironman. And then a second question occurs, which is how did I execute this Ironman? And this is funny because it's basically a parable to how I live my life. So first of all, obviously I set the goal I want to do an Ironman. Then I broke it down in the different disciplines and I immediately tried to create habits for them. It was the first day I did my first lane of swimming. I thought this will never work out. Why? Because I wasn't strength training all the time. I do a lot of BJJ and Muay Thai, and so I swam the first line. It was horrible. I mean, horrible. 50 meters. It was just, I can remember well. I thought this will not gonna work out. But obviously I knew this is the goal. I broke it down in different parts. What do I need to achieve until when? And then I formed habits around them. Habits are so powerful and they help me through life. I'm still continuing, or I'm still going on with the habits I created and routines I created for myself 10 years ago, which is waking up, breathing, meditating, reading, do the eat that frog, and then continuing with some other things. And I implemented this into the Ironman challenge as well. I kept around 3 hours of training during the day and I kept 6 hours on the weekend. That was necessarily because the time period I prepared for this, and based on the fact that I do not have any conditional fundament, I said, okay, I want to have enough time for it and I want to make sure it is enough to not just be successful with the event itself, but also make it in a reasonable time. And after I decided all those organizational tasks, I hired a professional coach. And with hired, I mean really hired. He was dedicating his whole time towards me, and we were making a professional plan and making sure that my time is used as efficient as possible. And this is something which is interesting, and I will come to learning, but I use coaches or professionals everywhere. And I'm not speaking about the coach who is telling you how to make $100,000 a month, and 100,000 other coaches. But for example, if I go skiing, I try to find a professional skier who helps me to advance. If I'm doing BJJ, I'm trying to find a professional BJJ black belt who helps me to advance. And everything I do, I feel that learning as much as possible is very, very intelligent and is an attitude, a way of living. I had a professional coach and he prepared everything with me. Fortunately, I living on a golf course, which is a clubhouse with a swimming pool and an area around. I could cycle around, run around. So it was very green, even if it has 30 degrees to 45 degrees. Most of the time waking up at 3 a.m. in the morning, started a cycling session because on Sunday, 6 hours of cycling, 140 kilometers. I started at 3 and I was done at 9, or sometimes started at 4, was done at 10. But I did it, I moved through, I had the plan which helped me. I ate a lot, hell of a lot. I was drinking olive oil as water, as I'm doing anyways in my health routines, and I just pushed it through. And I think the best part of all is that my health routines on the other side were very good anyways. Means I'm prioritizing sleep, I have a climate control room, heavy blankets, all those kind of things, how I'm eating, what I'm eating, when I'm eating, intermediate fasting and so on, was basically catalyzing the training effort. And then there's the last part, the most important part, basically, what did I learn doing an Ironman? And the first point is that time is relative. And this is so incredible because I thought already that I do not have any time to do something else. But the moment you're prioritizing something, it gets your attention, it gets your time. And so, as I said, it was 3 hours during the week and 6 hours on the week, and I haven't interrupted my entrepreneurial work in any way, or my family, or whatever. And so every time I think that I do not have enough time for something, it's bullshit. It's just a lack of prioritization. And if I want to do something, and if it becomes important to me, I also be able to dedicate time towards it. The second thing is, if I live a life like this, that I do a pilot license tomorrow and a skydiving license today, and then I will do an Ironman the day after tomorrow, I need to be aware that some people are not aligning with this, and that means relationships. And in the future, before you do something like this, which consumes obviously a lot of time, I want to make sure that the people who are around me are aligned with the process. They do not have to necessarily think it's good what I'm doing, or it's favorable. This is their opinion, which is totally fine and which is not really having any influence on someone like me anyways. But I want to make sure that no one gets hurt along the way, and that I'm not giving a feeling of I'm not caring at all about this human being, or that they are just irrelevant and I'm doing my thing. No, it's okay to do the thing, my own thing, but I want to make sure that they know what are the reasons why I have to do this, why it's important to me, and why they are important to me, even if I'm doing something else. And then if you have a certain level of discipline, if I have a certain level of discipline, there's nothing higher than that. What it means is I decided to do an Ironman, I dedicated time, I created habits, and I stick to it for the whole period of time. Means I feel that discipline is something you have or you have not. There's not like I'm very disciplined and you're a little bit less disciplined, but disciplined. You're disciplined or not. I am disciplined or not. And for me, I reach a certain level where I'm strengthening my discipline, or where I'm pushing it is not necessary anymore, because I personally know that if I stick a goal which is 100% dependent on me, which most of the goals are really, right? There's some external factors you can't really influence and so on, I am able to do it. To do the Ironman, it took me 11 hours and 45 minutes. And again, it was too fast. even if I focus in a meditative state on crawling, on feeling the water, getting out of the water, stepping on the bike, cycling, running, breathing, seeing the other people, hearing what's happening, making connections, I also realized that it's too fast. And again, it's all about the process. And so the moment I crossed the finish line, even with the meditative attention on the process itself, the whole thing was over. And I learned and I realized again and again, even if it is with the companies, it's about the process. It's about not when you have done it, when you accomplish it, you can trust me. It's not feeling like, okay, everything has changed. It's about being in the process, enjoying it, doing it as good as possible, improving along the way, being a constant learner. And then if you have finished it, let it go. And the let it go part is also very important, because I feel and I saw that a lot of people are starting identifying themselves with the accomplishment. And this is something I feel is very dangerous in our materialistic world. We have to let go what we are all over again to make sure that we can improve and be fluent and do not have identification with anything. It can be a materialistic subscription, but also obviously can be a spiritual subscription or a sporty subscription or whatever. And so to make sure you're not falling into that trap, I feel a mindset of I'm ready to move on after I achieved something is important. And then there are two things left. If you have a partner in crime, kids can be on a sexual level, but also can be a friend like Tim for me, you have something which is very, very, very rare. And for me, it's also something you have to take care of, you have to protect, and you have to make sure that loyalty is maintained in a way that there is no difference. It's priceless, you can't buy it. And if you have something who's contributing to your goals and who is doing this because he really feels connected with you, protect it, make sure it's staying long term, and that you also give something, because to find a worthy mate, you have to be worth of a worthy mate. And last but not least, and this is the last point, kiddos, maintain what you created. So if I train for an Ironman, the next day I shouldn't stop and get loose of all the condition and endurance I created. Or if you are in school, you do not just learn for a test. Everything you can grab is useful, and dots are connecting looking backwards. It means every time you fall into a situation where you can get extra knowledge, new knowledge, you take it and you take it seriously and you use it afterwards for something else. And for that reason, you shouldn't just learn for a specific test or a specific situation. You shouldn't just train for this certain event, but you take what you have created and you maintain it and you take it with you into the future. By the way, just real quick, I decided to work and live in Bali for 1 or 2 months. It's an amazing place actually, and it's very peaceful. It helps me to calm the mind, and especially now after the exit, it's even more important to make sure that I can align my thoughts properly and that I can steer my life into the next big thing, and I can recommend.